Good morning, I'm WaywornWyrm, and welcome to my channel, and welcome back to Vlogmas. It is December 3rd. It is the morning of December 3rd. It's probably when I am going to record most of the rest of these, is in the morning. I am editing Worm, and I am jumping in right here as earlier me takes a sip of tea to kind of talk a little bit more about this video before we really get into it, because this is admittedly a long video, and I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about it. So I meant to post this before going to work this morning, didn't have time, so I've been kind of editing this video has been kind of going on in the back of my mind all day long. So something that I want to point out here, I think I do a little bit farther in, is most of this is based off of stuff that Innuendo Studio has been saying. I've been watching a lot of his videos lately. I think they're really good. Please credit him with the good ideas that you're about to come across. Blame me for the bad. Yeah, I kind of just wanted to explain what I'm about to get into, and this is one of the best chances to just kind of jump in and say that, because I know that I might be accused of just kind of reveling in drama or something like that as I kind of in-depth go through a Twitter argument that I'm a part of that is now winding down. Turns out, when you call people on their bad faith arguments and everyone who replies is doing the same thing, they shut up pretty quickly, which, good to know. But the reason behind that is this was just a really great bad faith argument, or at least a really great example of a bad faith argument that I really want to dissect and go through, because it is such a bad faith argument, and how every part of it is... It's debatable if you take each tweet out of context and just analyze the words on the screen. It is debatable if it's bad faith or not. It becomes clearly bad faith when you set them all right next to each other. Okay, that's enough blabbing for me. I could probably make another 40-minute video about this whole thing. So I'm going to get back... Well, I'm going to leave... Let you get back to earlier me, because it tends to be when I have the most time. Caveat. So, what I want to talk about today is kind of related. It comes up because of a Twitter thread that I've been in that has... The replies have been going on for 2 or 3 days now. I think I first replied to this on Saturday. But, it's a thing. It's happened. So basically what... And it's also on my mind because of... I've been watching more of Innuendo Studios. If you haven't seen his stuff, go do it. He's pretty awesome. His kind of flagship thing right now is a thing called the Alt-Right Playbook. Really interesting. So what we're going to talk about is some tactics that I'm seeing in this thread that are reminiscent of what Innuendo Studios is talking about. one of the big things. So this starts off with, well, actually a lot. It's originally related to the to sort of a kerfuffle going on, a news story that can basically be summed up as some people are making a really big deal out of something that shouldn't be a big deal. And somebody who I don't know makes a hashtag claim. Yeah, like, it was a claim using a hashtag that... And then a wonderful person with a very anime name, we'll say that, and a video game character. I think it's someone from Metal Gear Solid, as their avatar, which I don't generally like to generalize people on that, but I am in this case, and it bears out. They reply to this hashtag claim saying, well, that's pretty generalized. And to be fair, it was. However, the claim that was being made is true in just under half. It talks about how a certain group does a certain thing, and I don't really want to get into it because it's kind of a polarizing issue, more so than it should be, and we're not talking about that polarization. What we're talking about is that some of the dishonest tactics. And so that's pretty generalized. That could be a dishonest tactic when it is... When the latest statistics that can be found on this issue say that just under half the people in this group do this thing. So is that generalized? Well, yes. But can "that's pretty generalized" be assumed to mean, like, well, I mean, come on, like, 1 in 10 do X. So saying all do X, yeah. You know, there's a bit of a difference in 1 in 10 does something, therefore I'm going to say all 10 in 10 do something, and 1 in 2 do something, so I'm going to say all 2 do something. So I point out that it's not that generalized. It's about as generalized as saying all people are men, because just under half the human population is men, and a little bit less than that, a slightly smaller percent of people in this group do this thing. And I said, if you interact with this group, you have just under a 1 in 2 chance of speaking to someone who does this thing. Whereas if you pick a random person off the street who's not part of this group, or maybe they are, we're gonna go with total random person, full population, you've got about a 1 in 10 chance of them doing this thing. So this subgroup is 5 times more likely than the average population to do this thing. So saying all people in that group do this thing, sure, it's a generalization, but it's one that fits so much better than the normal population. So I do that reply. At this point, I'm going off the idea that this person is trying to argue in good faith. That's pretty generalized. That's a really good skeptical response. It just doesn't really fit this particular thing. So I point out it's not that generalized. And then the person responds to me in a way that tips me off to what they're doing, and it becomes more and more clear. They said they'd admittedly like to see demographics and locations, which would be interesting to them. Also, how does this statistic go into other groups related to the group that I mentioned? And then ends with anecdotal evidence of, I once worked with a group that's semi-related to this, and they would never do this thing because this thing is a bad thing. So they want to know more about it. And to be honest, that last sentence where it's like, I used to work with this related group and they would never do something like this. Just saw that now, reading it for you guys. So yeah. I just said that their stats in a different tweet thread on this very tweet. So like, go up a few rows, go over to a different reply, and like it's there. And when I originally posted that, it was, at least for me, one of the top tweets. One of the first tweets you go through in that thread, and there are only like 200 or 300 replies, which I know that's starting to get a lot, but at the time it wasn't that hard. Now, granted, right now, looking at it, there's almost 2,000 replies, so a little bit harder. And their response was, well, seeing as how I don't know every tweet in the world, I was asking you the question. If you don't have the stats, then it's null. I was never arguing. I didn't even know where you cited your first set of stats. I just took it in good faith, but I'm not sure if I would or not. Because I said in my last tweet that I'm not convinced that he's arguing in good faith, so I'm not going to provide stats to someone that's not arguing in good faith, because that's a waste of my time. Because if someone is arguing in bad faith, if you provide them statistics, they're going to find a reason why your statistics are bad. Doesn't matter what they say. They disagree with this person who's arguing in bad faith, therefore, they're either going to discredit your stats, attack you, or move on, pretend you didn't say anything, or move the goalposts. All four of those waste my time. So I'm just like, I don't know that you're arguing in good faith. I'm not going to engage farther. I'm not going to spend the time to give you the stats, especially because they're very easy for you to find. And then they argue that what I said was null. That's a bad faith argument. They can find it out. I helped them. And then the whole, I don't know every tweet in the world. That's just jerking off. Let's be honest. So it goes on a little bit. Someone responds to them, calling them out for their tweet. And then they say this wonderful thing. How things work is if you make a claim, it is normally backed up by citations. It's like me saying 100% of statistics are made up. It seemed that the person, me, knew very specific numbers, and I merely wanted to know the source. That's all. Here's the thing. This isn't a debate in, like, we're not in high school in debate club at a debate meeting. I don't need to provide statistics. I don't need... Well, that is true. But what I meant was I don't need to sit here and provide citations for anything. Now, can you then decide that that weakens my argument? Sure. Go right ahead. But I don't have to. So that's most of what the first person is saying. Is just I'm not going to listen to your argument because you are not conforming to this idealized debate structure. And then at this point, it splits off into three. One just calls them a time waster. Another says you should look, blocking you because you just want to argue. And then here's a third one where it actually goes a little farther, and it might still be going. The last person to talk on there, I replied to them and immediately blocked them. But we're going to go down this longer path. Some random person comes in. I would have liked info on the other tweet thread as well. At least where to find it, or if there was a hashtag to find it with. Googling stuff is well and good, but sometimes specifics unlock better info. I can kind of understand this because it is over a day later when this person responds. At least over a day later compared to my first response about, go find another tweet in this thread. And I mean, it... Again, we're at the first tweet from a person who's arguing in bad faith, and their first tweet looks like it might be in good faith. It's debatable. Which is how this starts. Because that seems reasonable until you start applying it to what I said. I gave a very specific number, and if you even go up to the person, to the tweet that is being replied to, it seemed the person knew very specific numbers. Except this reply says, Googling stuff is well and good, but sometimes specifics unlock better info. So, when I'm not providing a citation, whether defending that I should have a citation, I have very specific information. And having very specific information is why is a reason why you need to provide a citation. However, since I don't provide a citation, my argument can then be knocked against because without a citation, I'm not being specific. There's no winning in that. One person, the argument, he was being too specific. The other, if I had more specifics, I could do it myself. Those are mutually exclusive arguments. And so then someone replies with, cool story, essentially. But these stats are very common. They are. So feel free to Google for the latest. Obviously, they would have posted a link if they remembered where it was, but not having it memorized does not make their argument null. So, I like this argument. it's giving me the benefit of the doubt. It is attributing a few things that I'm not that aren't true, but I can see how it would be, and if the roles were reversed, I would probably be taking the same tack of, obviously they would have posted a link if they remembered where it was. I don't remember where it was, but I also don't remember where it was because I don't care enough. I kind of left the conversation for a while by that point. I was following along, but I wasn't saying anything. I'm not providing links to that because I know what would happen if I did. They would be considered invalid. It's wasting my time. Sure, they're considering my argument null because I'm not, but it doesn't take me any time to not do something. And then the first person replies, goes, absolutely not, which I assume is to the but not having it memorized does not make their argument null. That is my assumption. That's what makes sense. And then goes, I pick up a lot more from an actual person-to-person interaction than repetitive searching, but it also really came off as not being an option in the thread. There's 3 words that they could Google that would give them this information. So, and then it splits again. You forgot how much this splits, and I'm in both of these. I reply in both of these splits, 2 in one and 1 in the other. And so the first person, the person who's been agreeing with me says it stopped being an option because he was a dick. Dick being Metal Gear Solid Avatar dude. Who then he comes back in, and yes, I have plenty of reason to believe that said person is a he. It says, I'm assuming you're making the assumption. I don't know how hard I can eye roll at that. Of me being a dick because I asked for citations, which is certainly not true. It is. If you say that someone's argument is null and void because they're refusing to give you citations in a situation where you don't need citations, come on, dude. I was being a neutral party till I had the facts. Declaring someone's argument null and void because they don't meet your standards is not being a neutral party. That is arguing against them. Since you're not being helpful or the person I was even addressing, I don't know why you're being so quick to hate. Personal attack. Like I said, if you engage with them, one of the options is they're going to do a personal attack. But here's the thing. As always, if you look at just that tweet in isolation, it's debatable about, are they being sincere or not? Are they arguing in bad faith or not? Maybe. Except here's the thing. They keep making arguments that are debatable on if it's in bad faith or not, which is a great way to peg someone as arguing in bad faith. So I responded to that with, if I had any doubts left about your intentions, they're gone now. You're not a neutral party. You just desperately want to come off as neutral. Any source you are given, you will find a reason to either dismiss it or move the goalposts, all under the guise of, quote, being neutral. And there's one more response to that. It's the person who's been agreeing with me, replying to me, saying, quote, neutral people are generally devil's advocates, aka time wasters, who only really help the cause of the oppressor. It's okay to block folks like that. And it is. If you find someone who is arguing in bad faith, especially if you have no idea who they are, it's okay to block them. I give you permission. So, why did I respond that way? I responded that way, like, I was sure by this point this person was definitely arguing in bad faith, because they are committing personal attacks and declaring that they're just a neutral party, that they don't have the facts, that they're demanding other people give them when it's super easy to go look up. Yeah, like, at this point, they are just continuing to try and nullify people's arguments rather than actually trying to find out information, while saying that all they're trying to do is find information. That's just, it's wrong. So that's the end of one of the two branches that we're going to look at. We're almost done with this. I know this is kind of a long video, and it may come off as I'm just going over drama, but I really wanted to talk about this because it's really good. It's a really good show of how bad faith arguers on Twitter do bad faith arguments. Yeah. So, going back up to the second person who disagrees with me. The tweet, absolutely not. I know personally I pick up a lot more information from actual person-to-person interaction rather than repetitive searching, but it also really came off as that not being an option in the thread. Again, Google 3 words, and you'll find what you're looking for. So, the person who originally made the hashtag statement comes in for one reply and says, or maybe you guys are just trying to protect this group who do the X. And remember, X is bad. X is a bad thing. And then, first person who disagrees with me, anime guy, just replies with absolutely not. That's useless thing. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do anything to back it up. And then another person comes in. It's nobody's job to, quote, make a claim and back up with citations. LOL, you want those MLA or APA? Ways to format citations, obviously. This is Twitter. You're not our professor. We owe you nothing. Do your own research. You're gaslighting the people in this thread and making excuses to evade the issues. Grow up. It's exactly what's going on. He's pretending to be a neutral party when he's not. And is doing nothing to either add to the words escape me for a moment, is doing nothing to add to the argument on either side, while just trying to declare everyone's arguments as invalid. And then another person came in and I've actually blocked this person. They made two posts that I'm aware of, and just I was done with them. And their posts are actually the reason why I decided that this is the subject I'm going to talk about today, because the last post I made right before starting this video, and they go, this claim that I made, the 40% claim, is based on a study from the early 90s, so it needs to be taken with a pinch of salt in light of probable attitude and indeed demographic shifts since that period. Quoted from a Reddit thread with actual citations and articles organized. That may be true. That claim may be based on a study that is fairly out of date. And I say as much. I say that may be true, but given this is going to be hard to say with still kind of obfuscating the issue. Given some shifts in this group since the early 90s, I would be shocked if that number was lower. I'm guessing you didn't bring up a more recent study because either there isn't one, which then makes that 40-some% our best number, or a more recent study shows a higher percentage. And that is also key. So, let's say that 40% number is actually 30 years old. If there's been no study done in those 30 years, that 30-year-old study is the most recent study we have. It's the best we have to go off of. If there's been no research done in 30 years, then saying anything about what you think happened in those 30 years is just a guess. Maybe it's anecdotal. But I have a lot of reason to believe that if there is a more recent study, and I believe there is, that number is higher. And you're not going to make the argument that this person made. They made this argument to imply, without actually showing anything to support that, that the number must be lower because it's been 30 years. Not necessarily true. In fact, I'd be shocked if it was true. So, that's what I say. And then they say all studies are inaccurate. That's a load of bullshit. It's technically true, and I can talk a little bit about that in a minute, but the argument that they're making with starting off a tweet with those 4 words is bullshit. That's a bullshit sentiment. And I'm calling out this bullshit. And vary from study to study based on the area. Again, true, but also bullshit. And group didn't go through the highly publicized, inarguable change that I claimed that they went through. Then group only has blank, which a normal person can also have with proper training and certification. Wrong. the three things that they list, you don't need proper training for, and you don't need certification for. Is there training and certification for these things? Yes. Do you need those to own those things? Depends on where you are, but not everywhere. Let me kind of look at this person real quick. Oh, I blocked them so I can't see their information. There's now two replies to that. I can't see what the other one is. Doesn't matter. So they make the second claim, and it's a bullshit claim because all studies are inaccurate and vary from study to study based on the area. On one hand, that is true. In the run-up to the 2016 election, there were a lot of studies done in the Chicago area, a lot of polls done in the Chicago area trying to figure out, by demographic, what's then candidate Trump's population, or popularity among various demographics. There's one guy. He was a black man in his 20s and college educated, who voted, or who was in almost every single one of these polls and loved Trump. And depending on which poll, because of his vote, Trump would have anywhere from a 5% to 100% approval rating among black men in their 20s who were college educated in the Chicago area. Because black men in their 20s who are college educated in the Chicago area, people who fit that demographic, there'd be 1 to 20 people who would answer, who would be part of that poll. So this one guy had just this huge sway that really wasn't reflective. In a couple of studies that he wasn't in, that demographic was showing a 0% approval rate of candidate Trump. So, yeah. That is true. Like, things like that happen. But good research studies, which this original 40-some% number that I'm claiming is based off good research. Maybe outdated research. I don't know. I don't actually know enough about the study, which makes me kind of a bad argument. It makes my argument look more poor because I don't know things that I should, and I fully admit that. But it's based off good research, and good research has a lot of ways of minimizing inaccuracy and variance based on area. But again, it depends on what you mean by area. If you're talking about nations, the only studies that would try to make sure that there's that they control for variance between nations are the few studies that are trying to do a worldwide thing, taking worldwide averages. Most studies don't try and control for that because there's huge differences between nations, and almost anything that you could want to study, the huge differences between nations, it is so much of an effect that, yeah. Their first sentence, all studies are inaccurate and vary from study to study based on the area, is technically true. it is also 100% a bullshit argument in this case. And they're also being really vague. Sure, they're being as vague as I was, but yeah, they're being vague. They're not giving people a way to try and back up what they're saying. I did. I didn't do it for them, but I let them know how to do it. And also, they are... The rest of their tweet is a lie. Just straight up a lie. And I then said, and now I know you're lying. This is the most dishonest argument about that group that you could come up with. You cannot be this misinformed. Goodbye. And without going into what it was, and I've gone a long way in this to try and obfuscate the issue, because the issue isn't that important for this talking for what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's not that. It's not important, and it would be overly polarizing. But if you do not believe that the group that I'm talking about hasn't done the thing over the last 30 years that I've been mentioning, I don't know what rock you're under, because you're not living in the real world. You're not watching the news. And I'm not saying this to kind of imply, oh, you're the news you are watching is so biased it can't be considered news. No. Even the super biased news sources admit that this is happening. Their take on it is it's normal and it's a good thing that this has been happening. That's what the argument is over between extremely biased news sources in opposite directions. And and this is, even saying that is problematic, because that implies that both news sources on either side in the U.S. Get as biased as the people on the other side, and that's just not true. One side is very much more biased than the other. But their argument is, the argument that's being had is not, is this thing happening or not? It's, is this thing normal, and is this thing a good thing? One side says yes, the other side says no. The side I fall on says no. It is not normal, it is not a good thing, it shouldn't be happening, it shouldn't have happened, it should be reversed. But yeah. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. I made a Vlogmas video that's much longer than the others have been, and it's probably longer than these will be, but I just kind of wanted to talk about some dishonest argument tactics. Tune in tomorrow for the next one of these.